If you could find someone to take the time to look at the top 40 golf swings, men who've only won majors over the last 100 years, and accumulate all the common data from head to toe, how they move their bodies in their golf swings, would that be interesting to you? Well, if so, that's what we're going to do in this series. We're going to take a look at the top 40 players over the last 100 years. We're going to go section by section to help you look and determine and see for yourself what they actually share in common that we can call fundamentals of a golf swing. Okay, so we start this series looking at head movement. What we've done is import video from both views for 40 golfers. Instead of making you sit through all 40 golfers, what we're going to do is show you just one golfer and then show you what we're measuring. And then we'll give you numbers and stats for what we've accumulated for all 40 players. Okay. So first of all, if you look at Colin on the right, got a yellow line. I call this head against the wall. So what we're looking at is back to front stability from this first view. So we play him back here. We see the forehead barely moves through the wall. Okay. And that happened in about 15% of the swings. Usually it's less than about 1 to 2 inches of movement through the wall. On the downswing, if the head pulls away from the wall, I just call that pull away. Okay. So that occurred in 57% of the players who've won majors. Okay. And again, it's not extremely significant amounts. You'll see here that's probably about 1.5 inches. So that's pull away and push through. In the next section, we calibrated left and right or sway movements in the head from the front view. So when the head tilts back, that's obvious. If the head moves towards our target in any part of the swing, that will become obvious because we have these parts marked. So if we just look at sway movement away from the target as a single category, 58% of players had some movement of the head go away from the target in the backswing. How much? Typically no more than about 1/4 of the width of the head. How many players move the head away from the target in the downswing? 20% of the players. And again, typically no more than about 1/4 of the width of their head. Next, how many players move their head forward in the backswing? 0%. How many players had their head move away from the target in the downswing? 42%. So that's your sway, back and forth categories. And lastly, if we look at head vertical location movement, you see Colin here drops his head. How many players actually lifted their head higher than it was at address? 17%. How many players dropped their head at some point in their swing? 83%. Now, interesting to note, if the player lifted his head in the backswing, they always drop their head almost the exact same amount in the downswing. So for the 17% who did lift their head, they lowered it in the downswing to nearly the identical location or height it was off the ground at impact. Now, just perhaps some interesting trivia on players that you've certainly heard of who did have some head movement that you would not think. Nicholas on several occasions showed head movement in a vertical dimension in the backswing. Tom Watson as well. But again, both of these players were talented enough to get the head pretty much identical dropping amount in the downswing. As far as side-to-side movement, almost no one showed a completely still head in the lateral direction, other than someone you might not think of. Lee Trevino showed no significant movement at all in the lateral direction, backswing or downswing. Trevino only dropped his head, which was quite interesting to watch. And again, just to make sure we're clear, any player who moved his head away from the target in the backswing, recentered in the downswing, typically no more forward than it was at address, but occasionally slightly more forward than it was at address. So what should we consider from this first video as far as head movement? If you are a world-class golfer, feel free to move your head in any direction you like, as long as you recenter laterally. It's okay for your head to drop a little bit in the downswing or the backswing, as long as you're good enough to be able to manipulate all the other parts of the swing to make contact good. Would it be a good idea to train yourself to sway in any direction? Probably no. Would it be a good idea to allow your head to lift dramatically in the backswing? No. Would it be a good idea to totally ignore what your head does in the golf swing? No. Is it okay for your head to move a little bit side to side if you can recenter properly? Is it okay for your head to raise a little bit, no more than an inch or two? Yes, if you lower it appropriately and quickly enough in the proper amount in the downswing. I think a good takeaway from this is that even though no player really keeps their head perfectly still, the idea is that because the eyes are contained in the head, the ears are attached to the head, we've got balance and vision to take into account. For the average golfer, it's probably a good idea to keep your head relatively stable. It wouldn't be a good idea to completely make your head totally rigid to the point where you feel uncomfortable, but it'd be good to keep your eyes pretty stable on the ball, keep your head fairly level as you swing, and to keep yourself pretty stable as a golfer as far as head movement in any direction. If you're enjoying this series so far, please give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.